Minibus fares are to be reduced to the previous amount with effect from November 7 in the wake of reduced fuel prices.
The third day of search for the missing U.S. aircraft ended again without success, but the team is to be boosted by American search and rescue experts.
And Guyanese have been very involved and equally expectant about the outcome of the general elections in the United States of America, with polling in its final hours.
The details of these and other stories, GNN News, and of course the latest sporting action in the Diamond Mineral Water and NCN Sport News and more after these. Good evening, I'm Delicia Fletcher.
And I'm Paul Moore.
With this edition of the 6 o'clock news for today, Tuesday, November 4, 2008. Here's what's happening, Paul.
Thanks, Delicia. The General Minibus Association has announced that fares will be reduced to the previous amount with effect from November 7. Commerce Minister Maniram Prashad says his ministry will be monitoring the situation to determine whether further reduction is necessary. We'll bring you details of this story a bit later in the cast. General Secretary of the People's Progressive Party, Donald Ramotar, says the global financial crisis could lead to further state regulations since past ideologies have failed. He predicts dire consequences should countries opt to forego this route. More in this report.
Since the turn of the year, economies in the United States, Europe and Asia have been hit hard by the financial crisis. This issue has been a focal point of discussion and concern in the Caribbean, where dependent economies are also at risk. According to General Secretary of the People's Progressive Party, Donald Ramotar, the financial crisis signals the failure of the neoliberal model which gripped the globe in the early 1980s. He believes that regulations by the state are necessary and views the unregulated development of economies as the chief contributor to the collapse of major financial institutions.
Indeed, all the ideologues who in the past advocated that the state should stay out of the economy and allow the free market to operate in an unfettered way have now resorted to the state to prevent further disasters. It is clear that the removal of state regulations in the financial market since the year 2000 was one of the main contributing factors to this recent crisis.
And with thousands of workers being put on the breadline, the General Secretary predicts that the crisis may spread to the productive sector. While Guyana's economy has not been seriously affected, Ramotar says remittances and projects which are dependent on funding could be put on hold. Falling commodity prices are also a grave concern since the national economy depends heavily on exports. Ramotar also spoke about increased state regulation of the private sector to avert a financial meltdown.
Well, unfortunately for us, we have never disbanded all the regulations that the state has, the instruments that the state has in its hands. I suppose it will have to be dealt with in a case-by-case basis. We'll have to wait and see. But at the moment, I don't think there is any need for any of that at this point in time. But let's say what will happen 6 months down the road or a year down the road if the international crisis continue to persist and deepen, then I suspect that we will have to reassess the situation.
In the meantime, the Central Committee is urging government to continue monitoring the situation and be prepared to take action to minimize any negative effects of the crisis. Reporting for the 6 o'clock news, I'm Shardal Lal.
The third day of search for the missing U.S. aircraft ended again without success. And Army Chief of Staff Commodore Gary Best has confirmed that the search party will be boosted by an American team shortly. Here's Edward Lade with more.
Army Chief of Staff Commodore Gary Best said that the search and rescue operation has intensified and the party is currently conducting ground search in the target area. The operation is being conducted jointly by the Guyana Defense Force and the British and U.S. militaries. A rescue coordination center was established at the control tower Timeri, while searches are being conducted by the Army's Skyvan helicopters, along with 2 British helicopters and 2 privately owned aircraft. Commodore Best also confirmed that the search and rescue team started ground search from today. The aircraft reportedly crashed in a rough terrain in the area. Meanwhile, CEO of Dynamic Aviation, Michael Stollefields, has arrived with a visual bubble window enhanced aircraft and a pilot who recently conducted a similar survey in Guyana. Sources have also confirmed that an additional search and rescue team from the United States is expected in Guyana to assist with the search. The U.S.-registered Beach King aircraft went missing in the hinterland on Saturday while conducting geophysical surveys in the vicinity of Chai Chai Falls and Ibambadai. On board the aircraft are 28-year-old Captain James Wesley Barker and First Officer Chris Paris, 23, both U.S. citizens, and geophysics technician Patrick Murphy, 20 years, and a Canadian citizen. The aircraft was chartered from Dynamic Aviation Group Incorporated by TerraQuest Limited to conduct geophysical surveys in Guyana. It departed the Chedijagan International Airport at 14 hours 14 on Saturday and was last reported over the survey area, commencing normal operations at 15 hours 6 on the same day. Air traffic control at CJIA Timeri alerted other aircraft in the vicinity to try to establish contact with the plane, but this was unsuccessful. The U.S. MCC Southern Command was also contacted for any reports of emergency distress signals emanating from the area, but advised that none were received. Edward Lane, the 6 o'clock news.
And now for that story we promised you earlier, where the General Minibus Association has announced that fares will be reduced to the previous amount with effect from November 7. Here's that story.
Consumers are being assured that they will benefit from government's reduction in the fuel prices come November 7. Commerce Minister Maniram Prashad confirmed that the fares will be reduced to its previous amount.
That the price of transportation will be reduced from $100 to $80. And this reduction will go throughout the country at different rates. We'll be monitoring closely. However, we'll be monitoring closely. They've just given me this assurance, and they're saying that they will reduce the price. We will be monitoring closely to see the percentage reduction as to what they have, how we show the country. We're yet to see that.
Advisor to the Minibus Association, Hilbert Archer, says reduction varies in different parts of the country. He noted that those fares which were not recently increased will remain the same.
It's a $20 difference on certain routes. Some of the routes came off $100, like Linden came off $100. Some other routes you can see coming off $60 because they went up $60. Some other routes you see coming off $40 because they went up $40. That's based on the mileage that they're traveling. So it will be an overall decrease. So everybody will benefit from it.
The association had refused to reduce the fares following a reduction for gas at Guy oil pumping stations at $777 per gallon, lamenting increased cost of vehicular spare parts. But the Commerce Ministry is in discussion with the association to determine whether concessions will be given. The official fare structure will be distributed shortly. Monica Jones, the 6 o'clock news.